All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here for today's webinar on tax filing for 1099 CHWs. So as a CHW, you might get contracted work and receive a 1099 at the beginning of the beginning of tax season, which is right now, and have to file your income and report your income and pay taxes on it then. If you are trainee through our program, you may have received a scholarship or a stipend, and this is also considered income. So if you received your stipend in 2023, you will be filing your income by April of this year. And then if you didn't receive your first stipend until 2024, this will apply to you next year. So we're super excited to have the director of the Lower Rio Grande Valley Area Health Education Center with us, Mr. Armando Lopez, and I will turn it over to you in a second, Armando. I just want to tell everyone, go ahead and tell everyone about the next webinar a month from now. Kate Sanchez, who is the Volunteers and Community Advocacy Manager of Planned Parenthood of South Texas, will be joining us to talk about the basics of community organizing and getting into advocacy work as a CHW. And she'll be using some examples from reproductive health rights organizations and how they've been able to do grassroots organizations in their communities and for the clients they serve. So you're going to scan the left barcode to register for that. I'll also send out the link in the recap email. And then on the right, this is something we launched recently. Scan this QR code to get added to a job announcements and professional development listserv. And so this is when I hear about a particular training opportunity, I will go and see who's interested in job training, or in-person training, who's interested in computer training, and then I'll go find you based on your location and I'll send you an email. So please sign up for that. And now I will turn it over to Armando, and then I will once Armando gets started, I'm going to put in the survey link today to sign up for a CEU. Just please make sure I will be able to see who stays on for the majority of the meeting so that afterwards I can get everyone who fills out that CEU survey their certificate by the end of next week. Thank you. All right, over to you, Armando.
Okay, let me see. I can share. And I'm going to have a question for you in a minute, Cheyenne. Is that full screen for everybody right there? Just want to make sure.
I think, yeah, we're not seeing your notes.
Yes,
no.
it is.
Okay, great.
Presentation
Good.
mode.
Okay, so I wanted to ask, I prepared this one. It's always been bilingual for me. So do I need to cover it in Spanish for some people? Or is it mostly English all the time?
So these webinars, we've always done in English. I think there's a lot of Spanish speakers and where Spanish is their first language. So what I'll do is I'll invite, if there's anyone on the call who did not understand something, if you want to chat me privately or to the group to have something repeated in Spanish, I'll prompt you, Armando.
Yeah, well, it's on the slide, so they'll be able to read a lot of it. So hopefully, because like I said, I prepared for it mostly in I usually give it in Spanish and then I cover some of the English. So this time I'm going to go reverse. So my name is Armando Lopez. I'm director of the LRGV AHEC. I am not an expert in taxes, but as a director, I do have to file 1099s for volunteers, contractors, and employees. Well, not employees, but so I'm well aware of all these tax filing. So that's what we're going to try and cover today. So the agenda for today is I'm going to try and cover the CHW effort. So all the English is going to be in blue for the most part. So that's where you'll follow. The black is in Spanish. The CHW effort, just go over it a little bit. Then understanding your role and the income that you get. I'm going to describe some tax forms, not all the tax forms. And then we're going to understand a little bit about expenses, which play a role in your income tax. And then we'll just wrap it up with some final tips and takeaways to finish up the presentation. So in general, I see a community health worker as part of the community and sort of in charge of taking care of the community's health. It's very It's a very nice profession, I think, to have. And I think most of you already know, since most of you are community health workers, your role in the community and how the community values you, etc. But the question comes into play because the agencies you work for are essentially businesses, is how do they see you and your effort as a community health worker? That's what's important for the income tax part or the tax component of it. Are they seeing you as the blue, go to the blue, volunteer, a consultant, or an employee? It's important for you to understand your role with this agency and ask the right questions, especially if you're a consultant or a contractor. I should say contractor, not consultant. So what is a volunteer? So according to the U.S. Department of Labor, a volunteer is a person who performs a service for a not-profit organization or any other agency for that matter, but this is the way it's written, without the promise, expectation, or receipt of compensation. So you're mostly just doing this volunteer work, not expecting any form of compensation at all. Generally, you're going to get less than $600 a year. And that would be you would be considered a volunteer for that organization. Once you go over the 600, then your status changes. Now you become an independent contractor. So once your threshold of stipends or other gifts crosses the 600, you're considered an independent contractor by the U.S. Department of Labor. And why are you not an employee? Well, it depends. It depends on a lot of factors that can come in. So the 6 factors that the U.S. Department of Labor looks at is the opportunity for profit or loss depending on your managerial skills of you doing the work, the investments that you make as a worker, the investments that the employer makes to you, the degree of performance of permanence of the work relationships. How long have you been working together? Is it something that's continual, timely, monthly, weekly, etc.? The nature and the degree of control over the worker. Do they control what you do, or do you have full control? Whether the work is performed as an integral part of the employer's business. Does it make money for them, or do you lose money if you don't work for them? And then the skill and initiative of the worker. Is this something that you take the initiative and you use your skills to do the work? That's what keeps you, those are the factors that are considered to make you an independent contractor. So that was clear and simple, right? It isn't. It's just very complicated. There's still cases ongoing in courts to deter where employers or contractors are suing their agencies to say that they were actually employing not a contractor, etc. So to make it simple and clear, we're going to cover the employee part. Are you an employee? This is a little bit easier to understand. The Fair Labor Standards Act call you an employee or part of the staff. A good rule of thumb is the individual whose work creates the business profit or loss for the organization, regardless of their skill level. A good example is sales. If you're a salesperson for that agency and you sell a lot of items, then the agency makes a profit, hopefully. If you don't sell, then the business loses profit or loses money. That makes you an employer. That's an easy definition to understand. So if you understand what a volunteer is and an employee is, and none of those fit you, then you're considered I'm sorry, this is the Spanish one, then you're considered a contractor. So, and a volunteer, remember, is free labor. You get less than $600, and you will not get any 1099s for the most part. If you're an employee, your employment is part of the employer's economy, profit or loss, and you get a W-2, you don't get a 1099. So contractor, remember I said depends with all those factors that I went over. As a contractor, are you a contractor or an employee This is a question that you need to ask the agency, because sometimes they could be paying you as a contractor, but you are actually an employee. So the good question is to ask the agency, am I a contractor or an employee? And tell me the reasons why I'm either or. Go back to that agency and ask these questions. As a contractor, you can get several 1099s, and I'll go over the ones that you are likely to get. So what's a 1099? The blue part here is a document sent to you by the employer that paid you a certain type of income throughout the tax year. Getting a 1099 does not mean you necessarily owe taxes on that income, but you do have to report it to the IRS on your tax return. Getting the 1099 means you have to include it in your tax return. You cannot just simply put it aside. Eventually, they'll be able to figure it out, because the agency does report your social or your TIN number, and they'll be able to find out who got a 1099 and who didn't. So there's 22 different types of 1099s that the IRS issues. We're only going to cover the first two, the miscellaneous income and the non-employee compensation. There's a 1099 MISC and the 1099 NESC. So what's the 1099 MISC? This document indicates the income paid by the agency. The income could be a gift, it could be attorney's fees, rent for space or equipment, reimbursements, or other items. Generally, if you get a 1099 from agency, it's going to be for reimbursements that they provided to you. It could be mileage, it could be travel, etc. They can send you a 1099 MISC. This document will not include any work compensation. Your services should not be reported using the 1099 MISC. This is what it looks like. Here's the 1099 MISC, and then the total would probably be in box 3 as other income. It's used for several things. That's where you see other things. But for us, community health workers, it's going to be under other income here. If they withheld taxes, it would be here. If they did, it would be great, because that'll help you when you file your tax return. Now, the 1099 NEC, this document or form is used by a business to report payments made to an independent contractor, a freelancer, sole proprietor, or self-employment individuals. So this is for services. This is usually the one that you're going to get. This is new. I think it just started 3 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. So this is you used to get the 1099 MISC, but now you get the 1099 NEC. And why did they do that? Well, let me show you what it is. This is what it looks like. The total would be right here in box number 1. Again, if they withheld taxes, it would be here, and it would help you to file your income tax. We have no state or any of that. So when you file your 1099, your income tax. Oh, okay. Let me backtrack there. I was just going to say, if you get a 1099 NEC, usually you're going to have to pay income tax. But I'll go over of how and why we need to consider if we want to, or how we want to file this in just a second. So when you file your income tax, the 1099 miscellaneous, you're going to file it as other income on the 1040 forms. I didn't put the numbers of the line because it varies between 1040A and 1040, but it goes under other income. This would be not labor income or not work income. It just goes to the income, that money you got. Usually it falls out when you start doing the tax component of it, and you don't pay any taxes on it, because this was more of a reimbursement to you. You could also file it under the Schedule C as a business if it was money that you received for services done. So those are the 2 areas that you can report the 1099 miscellaneous. I think most agencies are getting away from this because it becomes a little complicated. They have to prove exactly how the income was given to you and why. Why wasn't it just a straight, what do you call it, expense and reimbursement? But just in case you do, you know where to file it. If you get a 1099 NEC, then you need to report it on the Schedule C for a business. So, oh, here it is, I have it. So you will have to, there is income tax due as a self-employed business. If you receive a 1099 NEC, there's taxes due. There is a way around it, and well, I'm going to cover it a little bit, but for the most part, you got to keep it in your head. If you get this form, you have to pay taxes because this is for services, for work. So what do? Well, it depends. It depends if the income is going to benefit you, or if it's going to be, if it's beneficial for you, or if it's bad for you. Because one of the benefits is if you do report it, it's contributing to your Social Security. It's Social Security for retirement purposes, Medicare. I'm not going to go over exactly how it contributes, but the more you contribute to Social Security, it's going to help you when you retire. You could also be eligible for some work income tax credits. Within your income tax, you get credits for income that comes from work. So you have to talk to that with your tax advisor, whoever helps you do the taxes, to see if you qualify for some of those. It also helps you get other benefits because as you get more work income, you're eligible for other local, state, or federal benefits that are not part of the income tax. But because you did report it as income, it increases the amount or the threshold that they need for you to receive those benefits. So you have to look out to see what is best for you. And I'm going to mention this. I'm mentioning this because I'm going to show you how you can actually reduce this total income that you got on the 10 NEC, the non-employee compensation. Is the income bad for you? Well, it's bad for you if you really just can't pay the amount of taxes that come in, right? The other thing is the income increases your tax amount if you jump from brackets. Most of those are within the 12 and 22% tax bracket for income tax. If you get a little bit more, it just might push you over to the 24% tax bracket. But usually we want to stay in the 12% tax bracket. And that's why it could hinder you if you once you get this income and you decide to use it all. It could also prevent you from getting those other benefits that I talked about that you could qualify for. Also, if you get too much income reported, then you might not qualify for some of the state, some of the federal benefits that are out there for you. So just jumping into, because we do have to report, remember, you do have to fill out Schedule C as a business if you get the 1099 NEC. The blues over here, because like I said, in Spanish. So the government sees you as a business, simply put. You are a business if you get this. So what you can do if you are a business, then you can also report expenses, and we'll go over those in a minute. So decide, is the income beneficial for you? If you report the whole income, which is example one, I got $1,200, I'm going to report it all because it helps me get some tax credits, then I'll report it all. If it hinders you and it's jumping you from tax bracket or it's preventing you from getting some other benefits, then you want to report expenses. And once you report the expenses, that'll reduce the total amount of income that you actually have to report and pay taxes on. And this is just an example. I'm going to go over some of the expenses that are out there that could help you a little bit more, a little bit less. It's up to you and your situation. So this is a general list. I'll go over a few, but in general, the expenses include mileage, your mobile phone or your phone if you still have a home phone, computer, internet, software, applications, mobile applications, office space, utility, office supplies, snacks and refreshments. These are the ones you provide when you're doing a service, you're doing a presentation, etc., with some of your community members. Other transportation, taxi, bus, etc. Now we rent scooters also in case you need to do that. advertisements, if you have business cards that you produce or flyers that you printed out of your home. And there's a few more that if you talk with your tax advisor, you could go over. They become a little bit more complex, but there are a few others that you can also claim as expenses to reduce the amount of income that came in. So as an example is mileage. So the federal mileage reimbursement is 65 cents per mile. You need to keep a document of the miles you drove to that job. You can use Google or other different websites to document the miles to the location and back from the location. So that's, and also date the documents. Don't include errands or other trips. It was very popular, and you can still use it to write the mileage before you start to go to the job site where you're going to do your presentation or education service, and then write it again when you return back home or to your place of employment. And that'll give you a good documentation for the miles that you drove for that year, if you keep it all together for that year. Or you can also go and just type it up on Google, because most of us, I think we try and kill two birds with one stone. And when we drive to somewhere to give a talk, we'll stop somewhere else or we'll go somewhere else, and that'll change the amount of miles. And if you keep good documentation, that it's not going to be a problem. You just say stopping point, starting point, etc. But you do need this documentation so that they can give you the reimbursement for the mileage. The mileage is high because it includes the cost of car maintenance and the gasoline. So you can't claim oil tires, oil changes as a separate expense. It's all going to be included as part of the mileage. So here we go into the tricky one, the mobile phone. So the expenses can include the telephone cost itself, the service, and the insurance. But you have to keep a document of the time that the phone is used for work. It's easier to just set time limits, but you can also justify by going and marking every call that you make. Mobile phones now keep the time that you were on the phone, etc., so that you can justify the time that the phone is used for work. In general, a personal phone expense should not exceed 50% of the expenses. It's usually recommended to be it is usually recommended, or most tax advisors say 20% is a fair amount. But if you can document that you use it half of the time, then go ahead and include it as part of your expenses. So in general, for all the items that are listed, I'll bring them back, the expenses in a minute. But keep documents like receipts, etc., or proof of all the expenses that you do for work. Justify why the expense is part of work. Usually good to, on the receipt, put a little note of why you bought that item and why it's essential for your work. Keep a notebook of all the times, expenses that you did, and that'll help you justify all your expenses when you do the return. Just to cover a few office spaces here, it's very tricky. They go with the space that you allocate, that you use as an office, because usually we don't have a confined office, but if you do, it makes it a little bit easier. But what's the square footage? Utilities also, it'll be the percent of the office space that you use if it's the same one. Unless you have everything separate, then that's different. If you pay rent for the office, that also comes into play. Office supplies in general that are used for the work. Like I said, snacks and refreshments when you do your talks or presentations. Those are expenses, some of the things we just don't think about. And then advertisements. And like I said, there's a few others. So keep documents of all these, and then you can report it as expenses. Tips. If you have enough expenses, you can almost wipe out the total amount reported in the 1099 NEC. Because a lot of times, And I was guilty of it too at one point. We did not give community health workers a large enough stipend to cover a lot of these expenses. We just asked them to show up at places and they would drive their own car, buy their own meals, etc., and use their phones to contact, etc. So we were not covering all the expenses, and then we turn around and give them a 1099 NEC or a MISC, and they would have to pay income tax on that because they didn't know this stuff. So be sure to do it. So understand your role with each agency. Are you a volunteer, contractor, employee? I know a lot of us community health workers work with several agencies, so you got to know the role for each agency. Maintain records of the expenses if you are a contractor, which if you're getting that 1099 NEC, you are. It is important to know if the income is beneficial or not good for you at all. So when you file your income tax, ask for both results from your tax consultant or tax assistant. Tell them to run it with the expenses that you have, and then tell them to run it without the expenses. Compare them. Look what's better for you. And like I said, the last tip is remember you're contributing to Social Security and Medicare. Income tax is beneficial later when you retire. And that's it, because my presentation was both English and Spanish. So since I did it mostly, any questions? Do I need to repeat it in Spanish, some parts?
I have a question. So this is my first time doing this Zoom meeting. Is there going to be a link so I could hear it again?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm pretty sure it's probably already been asked, but I would like to revisit this program or this education.
Yes. I will share the recording with everyone who registered.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Armando, could you please put up the first slide you have on volunteerism? I just wanted to check on something.
Is it on?
Yes, thank you. Okay. I just needed to check on something just to make sure. Thank you.
Rosalba?
Yes, sir. I would like to see if you can repeat the slide from the report reportando la 1099 NEC, reported 1099 NEC. And also have more question. I have a question. That one. Wait, let me put my hand down. Because it's right there. Oh, sorry. I have a question. My question is, can you please put it back? There you go.
Oh, okay.
1099 NC. The report. Is that one? Okay, freelancer. So
Yeah, it describes it.
Yeah, okay. My question is, when the trips, when you go from point A, B, C, and let's say that you went to point A to your presentation and it's time to eat, and you stop, you drive from the place and you eat, it doesn't count it when you stop for eating and then go to the education center. Let's
Correct.
like what say, I was in point A. I went home from the gas station to my point A, and then point C, I have to eat. I mean point B, from A, B, and B, C. I try to connect it, that part. But am I allowed to put that mileage when I finish my presentation? But I have to eat, and then I go to somewhere else for education center.
Right. So when you decide, let's say you finish the presentation and you say, I'm going to go eat, then you write your mileage of when you got there, right? Which is at the presentation place. You write it again as a new starting point. And then you go to eat. Let me see. And you go to eat. And then when you stop from that eating place, now you're going to go back to your workplace. Now that's the end. And then you start another one from the place that you ate back to your workplace. But you will not count that drive from the presentation point to where you ate as part of your mileage. And that's why I was mentioning that it might be easier if you just document it on Google, where it's from home to that location and then back home or back to your workplace. And because that gives you a straight number, and it's a lot easier just to maintain, and that is acceptable.
Great. Any more questions?
That's for me.
Andres, I don't know if you do have a question, but you're more than welcome to come off mute and ask it. All right, Armando, any last parting words?
Yeah, the 1099s usually should be mailed out by the 31st. And so you should be receiving them the first or second week of February. If you don't, call the agency to make sure that you're not going to be getting one. Sometimes they have the wrong address and they get them back. And then because they don't know where to mail them, supposedly, they just keep them in the office. And now it becomes your responsibility to go get that 1099. So make sure you get back to the agency, make sure how much, if they're going to send one to you or not. It's usually an easy question. Maybe they're not going to send you one, so you don't have to worry about, so you can file your income tax. And then also, I think today or tomorrow is the first day you can actually file your income tax with all the forms correctly, because if you filed it before, you're going to have, you might have some corrections that need to be done, because Congress did some last minute law changes.
Well, thank you. I definitely learned a lot during this webinar. All right, everyone, thanks for joining, and I hope to see you in a month, and we'll talk about grassroots organizing. I'll send out the recording if you weren't able to see all of it or want to revisit, and I'll have the links that I shared in the beginning. So thank you. Bye, and thanks again, Armando.
Thank you.
Thank you.